Something is missing from this lion silhouette, and it will save no one's life. Dawn over the Tsavo thornbush doesn't look like the Africa most footage shows. No open grass rolling to the horizon, just a wall of thorn scrub, red dust, and a maze of trails cut by animals that have learned to move sideways through impossible cover rather than straight across it. A giraffe browses at the edge of a clearing, head buried in acacia leaves 5 up. Below, in cover so dense a human would need a machete to follow. 5 lions are already committed to something almost no pride elsewhere on the continent would attempt. Bruce Patterson, who has spent decades studying this exact population and wrote the definitive account of Tsavo's lions, found something the rest of Africa's lion research never had to reckon with. No wildebeest herds pass through here. No zebra migrations sweep the plain. The mid-sized prey every other lion population leans on simply doesn't exist in these numbers at Tsavo. So the lions adapted the only way they could. They started hunting giraffe. The pride splits without a signal anyone watching would catch. 2 lionesses drift wide through the brush, cutting off the retreat before the giraffe has any reason to suspect one exists. A giraffe's kick can cave in a lion's skull in a single strike. Every lion here has grown up around that fact the way other prides grow up around thorns and heat. The attack, when it lands, is close to silent. A lioness breaks from cover at the giraffe's flank, latching onto the shoulder as the animal rears back, front legs already lashing out at nothing. The rest of the pride floods in from 3 directions at once, weight dragging the giraffe's head down inch by inch until the height that has always been its shield finally works against it instead. It takes the full pride, working as one committed unit, almost 11 minutes to bring it down. Not one of these lions carries a mane worth mentioning, not even the pride male trailing at the rear. And that absence is about to matter far more than anyone watching from outside Tsavo would ever guess. For decades, biologists argued over why Tsavo males grow almost no mane at all. A trait so consistent across generations that early explorers occasionally mistook adult males for oversized lionesses at a distance. Testosterone isn't the issue. Tsavo males test just as hormonally male as their mane cousins elsewhere on the continent. The leading explanation instead points to the thornbush itself. A full mane traps heat mercilessly in a climate already pushing past 40 degrees Celsius for months at a time. And it snags constantly on the exact thorns this population has to move through every single day of its life. Patterson's research found injury patterns consistent with mane loss caused by repeated entanglement, hair torn away by branches rather than shed on any hormonal schedule. What's left instead is a lion built almost entirely around function, thicker neck muscle, a body proportion for shoving through dense cover rather than posturing across open plains where a mane's visual impact would actually matter to a rival watching from a distance. This same population carries one of the darkest reputations in the history of human-wildlife conflict. In 1898, 2 male lions, later dubbed the man-eaters of Tsavo, killed dozens of railway workers building the line through this exact stretch of bush before finally being hunted down. An event that turned into books, films, and a permanent shorthand for Tsavo lions as uniquely monstrous. Patterson's later research complicated that legend considerably, tying the attacks to dental disease and desperate prey scarcity rather than any species-wide bloodlust. The maneless lion earned a reputation built on one exceptional crisis over a century ago, one that still overshadows what these lions actually are on any ordinary night. Quiet, cooperative hunters shaped entirely by thorns, heat, and a menu nothing else in Africa forced any lion to solve. Half a mile from where the pride feeds, a bull elephant works a dust wallow with his trunk, throwing loose red earth across his own back in unhurried, repeated sweeps. He isn't a different subspecies. He isn't even a different color underneath his own hide. Strip away the dust after a heavy rain, and this is the same gray African elephant found from Amboseli to the Okavango. No genetic quirk involved at all. What makes Tsavo's elephants instantly recognizable is laterite, an iron-rich soil that stains everything it touches a deep rust red, and every elephant here spends a meaningful part of each day coating itself in exactly this shade on purpose. The wallowing serves two overlapping functions that have nothing to do with looking distinctive. Thick red layer blocks direct sun from reaching skin that, despite its bulk, sunburns easily, and it smothers ticks and biting flies that would otherwise work at the same folds and creases all day without relief. What began as pure function has become, almost by accident, one of the most visually striking populations on the continent. Herds moving through pale, sun-bleached scrub like something dipped in rust. That same red dust settles into every crack of an elephant's skin deeply enough that a single dry season without a proper mud bath leaves the color noticeably duller. Evidence that this isn't a one-time coating, but a ritual repeated constantly across an animal's entire life. Calves born here don't inherit the color. They earn it, rolling in their first wallow within days of birth. Coached less by instinct alone than by simply following what an entire herd around them is already doing without exception. Red from trunk to tail before the week is out. A slender shape rises on its hind legs against a wait-a-bit thorn, front hooves braced against a low branch, neck stretched to a height that looks structurally impossible for something built like an ordinary antelope. This is the gerenuk, and that upright stance isn't a rare trick performed under stress. It's a daily feeding posture, one this species relies on more habitually than any other antelope on the continent. In an unusually long neck, even by antelope standards, let it reach leaves sitting well above what impala, dik-dik, or lesser kudu sharing this same thornbush could ever access from all fours. That reach opens an entire vertical layer of the canopy that belongs, for practical purposes, almost exclusively to the gerenuk. Where other browsers compete shoulder to shoulder for the same low branches, this one simply steps up and out of the argument, feeding on foliage nothing else nearby is built to challenge it for. The trade-off arrives the instant it commits to that posture. Balanced on two legs, weight thrown backward against a branch. A gerenuk loses the split-second readiness every other antelope keeps in reserve. Unable to break into a sprint from that position without first dropping back down and resetting its stance. A pause measured in a second or two, meaningless most of the time, becomes exactly the opening a patient leopard has been waiting through an entire afternoon of stillness to receive. A debt this animal quietly pays every time it wants something none of its neighbors can reach. Reaching higher than any neighbor bought this animal a private buffet. It also bought a body that has to choose every single time it feeds between eating well and being ready to run. Trade-off no other browser sharing this same thicket ever has to negotiate. A branch shifts, barely. A shadow that might have been an animal a half second ago is simply gone, and the thornbush closes back over the space where it stood as if nothing had ever been there at all. Not even a rustle left behind to prove otherwise. The lesser kudu isn't rare. Population estimates across East Africa run into the tens of thousands. What it is, almost uniquely among mid-sized African antelope, is nearly unfilmable. A species wildlife documentary crews routinely describe as one of the hardest to capture on camera, despite spending weeks in territory where it's known to be common. Narrow white stripes run vertically down a gray-brown coat, a pattern that, against the specific dappled light filtering through Tsavo's dense thornbush, breaks the animal's outline apart almost completely within a few steps of stillness. Where an impala relies on raw speed once spotted, a lesser kudu's entire strategy depends on never being spotted at all. Freezing at the first hint of anything unfamiliar rather than bolting and giving away its exact position. That instinct runs so deep that individuals have been recorded standing motionless for extended stretches with a predator passing within a few meters. The stripes and stillness together doing work that outright fleeing never could accomplish in cover this thick. Males carry loosely spiraled horns, smaller and less dramatic than their greater kudu cousins. Rarely visible for more than a passing second before the animal folds itself back into the brush. Researchers studying this species often rely more heavily on camera traps and dung surveys than direct sightings. An animal common enough to matter ecologically and elusive enough that most visitors to Tsavo leave having never confirmed they saw one at all. Gone again before the memory even has time to fully register. Nobody chose the name deliberately, but it fits. Large, dark preorbital glands sit just below each eye of the herola. Glands so prominent they read, from a short distance, as a second pair of eyes staring back. Local herders have called it the four-eyed antelope for generations. The reality behind those glands is less mystical than the nickname suggests. They secrete a scent used to mark territory, a communication tool rather than any actual visual organ. But the resemblance has stuck hard enough that field guides still note it as the species' single most memorable feature. What should be the far more urgent headline is the population number attached to it. A number that rarely makes it into any conversation about this animal at all. The herola survives today only in a narrow strip of habitat straddling the Kenya-Somalia border near Tsavo. the last wild range of a species that once ranged across a considerably wider stretch of East Africa. Numbers have collapsed by more than 90% over the past several decades, driven by a combination of disease, drought, competition with livestock, and habitat conversion, leaving one of the smallest remaining populations of any large African mammal still clinging to existence in the wild. Conservationists frequently describe the hirola as the most endangered antelope on the entire continent, a title that carries far less public recognition than almost any other species holding it. There is no widely known origin story here, no famous incident, no viral image, just a quiet, steady decline unfolding largely outside the attention any comparably endangered predator or elephant population would automatically receive. A species running out of both habitat and, just as critically, out of anyone watching closely enough to notice in time before that last narrow strip of border scrub runs out too. A lion that traded its crown for cooler blood. An elephant wearing borrowed color as both sunscreen and signature. An antelope that stood up to eat and sat down to survive. A cousin so good at disappearing that science mostly knows it through its droppings. And a face carrying 2 extra eyes that were never really eyes at all. 5 separate bargains struck with the same unforgiving thornbush. None of them transferable, none of them optional. Take the mane away from a savanna lion in Serengeti grass and you'd only be left with a weaker lion. Here, it was the price of admission. Somewhere behind the herd, a call rings out that sounds closer to a small trumpet than any bird most people have ever heard. Follow it far enough across Africa and the same basic beat. The same cask riding above it keeps reappearing in wildly different bodies. One walks, one hunts snakes on foot. One seals its own mate into a wall of mud. Same family, barely the same job description twice. Strip away the flight and what's left is something closer to a small, armored dinosaur stalking the grass on stilted legs. The southern ground hornbill stands nearly a meter tall. Spends almost its entire life walking rather than flying. And hunts prey most birds this size would never consider approaching. Snakes, scorpions, even small tortoises. Taken with a heavy, hooked bill built for crushing rather than picking. Families here operate on a scale closer to a small mammal pack than a typical bird's nesting pair. Older siblings from previous years often staying on to help rather than dispersing right away. Groups of up to 9 adults defend a shared territory. Raise a single chick cooperatively across a breeding attempt that can stretch beyond a year from egg to independence. And individuals have been documented living past 70 years in captivity. A lifespan that dwarfs almost every other bird sharing this same landscape. Deep, booming calls carry for kilometers across open ground at dawn. A sound so low that early researchers occasionally mistook it for a distant lion rather than anything with feathers. That call anchors the entire group's territory. A daily broadcast confirming which patch of ground still belongs to which family before a single bird has to defend it directly. Breeding success runs painfully slow even by the standards of a long-lived bird. A single chick raised roughly once every 9 years on average across a group's shared effort. A reproductive rate so low that population recovery, once numbers drop in a region, can take generations to show any real progress at all. A species walking through life at exactly the unhurried pace its own biology seems to insist on. Where the ground hornbill left flight behind almost entirely, von der Decken's hornbill stayed airborne and simply hardened itself against everything. The thornbush throws at anything smaller. Males carry a bright red and yellow bill that looks almost ornamental against the muted gray-brown of Tsavo's dry scrub. A visual signal that reads clearly even through dense cover most other bird colors would vanish inside. This species belongs to a group of hornbills so tightly associated with arid, thorny country that ornithologists sometimes use its presence alone as shorthand for describing an entire habitat type. It forages low, working termite mounds and fallen fruit across ground. Other hornbills in wetter regions rarely have to touch, tolerating heat and dryness that would push many other mid-sized birds toward the nearest available shade for most of the day. Breeding follows the same walled nest pattern found across much of this family. A female sealing herself into a tree cavity with a mud plug she builds from the inside, leaving only a narrow slit through which the male passes food for the entire incubation period. In a landscape this exposed, that sealed cavity functions as one of the few genuinely predator-proof spaces available to any bird small enough to need one. A fortress built from the inside out and dismantled again only once the chicks are ready to leave. What makes this particular hornbill worth singling out from the rest of this family is simple. It thrives in exactly the conditions that force almost every other mid-sized animal in Tsavo into constant compromise. Treating punishing heat and thorn not as an obstacle to route around, but as home field advantage. Territory it holds almost uncontested precisely because so few other hornbills ever bother competing for it. Smaller, noisier, and considerably more common than either relative covered so far. The red-billed hornbill trades size and specialization for sheer visibility. Flocks of a dozen or more moving through campsites and open woodland with a boldness neither the ground hornbill nor von der Decken's typically shows around people. Its nesting behavior pushes the family's signature walled-in strategy to an almost claustrophobic extreme. A female selects a natural tree cavity, then plasters the entrance nearly shut using mud. Droppings and food remains mixed together into a workable paste, leaving only a narrow vertical slit barely wide enough for her own bill to pass through. She remains sealed inside for the entire incubation period and well into early chick rearing, completely dependent on a male delivering food multiple times a day through that single narrow gap. If the male dies or abandons the nest during this stretch, the consequences are close to absolute. A female and her entire brood trapped behind a wall they cannot easily break down from the inside without risking exposure to the very predators the seal was built to keep out in the first place. a design with no real contingency built in at all. That total dependency makes this one of the more genuinely high-stakes partnerships in the bird world. Success resting entirely on one partner's uninterrupted reliability across weeks with no real backup plan. Despite that risk, the strategy clearly works well enough at scale. This species remaining one of the most frequently encountered hornbills across dry East African bush. Its sharp, chattering calls a near-constant soundtrack to any walk through Tsavo's thornbush at midday. Proof that a fortress this fragile can still be a winning bet, generation after generation. Follow the thornbush far enough toward wetter ground at Tsavo's forested margins, and the family's soundtrack changes entirely. The trumpeter hornbill produces a call so close to a distressed infant's wail that first-time visitors camping near forest edges have occasionally mistaken it for a genuine human emergency somewhere in the dark. Unlike the insect and small vertebrate diet favored by its ground-dwelling and dry country cousins, this species runs almost entirely on fruit, following the fruiting cycles of specific fig and forest trees closely enough that its movements across a landscape can serve as a rough calendar for when particular trees are ready to feed an entire local food web. Large fruit gets swallowed whole and later regurgitated intact. Seeds carried well beyond the parent tree's own canopy and deposited, undamaged, in an entirely different patch of forest. That single habit makes the trumpeter hornbill one of the more important seed dispersers operating along Tsavo's forest fringes. A bird whose stomach effectively functions as a delivery service for trees that depend on exactly this kind of long-distance transport to colonize new ground at all. A partnership neither species entered into knowingly, but both now depend on completely. Groups move noisily between fruiting trees in loose, chattering flocks, wingbeats producing a distinctive whooshing sound audible well before the birds themselves come into view. Air pushed through specially structured flight feathers rather than any vocal mechanism at all. Where the ground hornbill claimed the earth and von der Deckens claimed the driest scrub, this relative staked its entire existence on the canopy's edge. Exactly where dry thornbush finally gives way to something green enough to fruit, a border zone none of its relatives ever bothered fighting it for. The final relative in this story never touches the ground at all if it can possibly avoid it. An entire lifetime spent looking down rather than up. The silvery-cheeked hornbill spends nearly its entire life in the high canopy of montane and coastal forest patches within reach of Tsavo's wider ecosystem. One of the largest hornbills on the continent, males carrying a tall, ridged casque atop the bill that makes an already substantial bird look genuinely prehistoric silhouetted against a forest skyline. That casque, hollow rather than solid despite its size, may amplify the species' loud braying call across dense canopy where a simple flat bill would carry sound far less effectively. Though researchers still debate exactly how much of its function is acoustic versus purely visual, a status signal advertising size and health to rivals and potential mates alike. Evolution apparently unwilling to settle on just one explanation. Diet runs heavily toward fruit here too. echoing the trumpeter hornbill's own strategy, but at a scale suited to a considerably larger bird, working a considerably higher stratum of forest. Often feeding at heights of 30 m or more, where ground-based observers frequently only ever hear it rather than actually see it clearly. Females follow the same walled nest strategy documented across nearly this entire family. Sealed into a high cavity for weeks at a stretch. Though at this height the seal buys something the ground hornbill's low nest never could. Near total safety from anything without wings, 5 relatives. 5 addresses spanning from bare earth to the highest reachable canopy. And not one of them would recognize the other's daily routine as remotely familiar. Despite sharing the exact same ancestor and the exact same basic shape of bill. One family, one recognizable bill. 5 completely unrelated lives layered on top of it. The ground hornbill walked away from the sky entirely. Vonda Decken's made a home out of exactly the heat everything else avoids. The red-billed hornbill bet its entire family on a wall of mud and one reliable partner. The trumpeter carries a forest's future seed by seed in its own stomach, and the silvery-cheeked simply climbed until nothing on the ground could reach it anymore. Same cask, same curved bill, almost nothing else in common at all. Walk back through everything covered here and a quieter pattern emerges beneath the obvious drama of maneless lions and giraffe-sized kills. A lion's absent mane. An elephant's borrowed color. A hornbill sealed behind mud. A herola's fading numbers. These are not 10 separate stories that happened to share a postcode. They're 10 different receipts for the same brutal transaction Tsavo demands of everything living inside it. The ground hornbill's slow reproduction and the maneless lion's cooperative hunting both trace back to the same root cause. A landscape too poor in resources to support anything but patience and teamwork. Elephants wallowing in red dust dig and widen waterholes that dozens of smaller species end up relying on entirely by accident. An unintentional public works project repeated daily across thousands of animals. Gerenuk and lesser kudu split the same thornbush into vertical layers. High brows and hidden cover, without either species ever needing to negotiate the arrangement directly. Then there's the ledger's other side, between 1970 and 1989. Poaching gutted Tsavo's elephant population so severely that some estimates place the loss above 80%. Red-dusted herds reduced to fragments almost overnight by a demand for ivory originating thousands of kilometers away. The herola's collapse traces to a tangle of causes: drought, disease, competition with expanding livestock herds. But the common denominator across nearly every driver is the same shrinking margin for error that a species already surviving at the edge of viable range can least afford to lose. Ground hornbills need old, hollow trees large enough to nest in, and those exact trees keep disappearing as charcoal production and land clearing push deeper into what used to be uncontested bush. None of these losses arrived as a single dramatic event most people would recognize by name. They arrived the way water leaves a cracked container. Slowly enough that no single day looked like the crisis it actually was. What's changed more recently offers something closer to cautious relief than triumph. Aerial anti-poaching patrols run by the Tsavo Trust alongside Kenya Wildlife Service have helped elephant numbers climb back from their historic low. Herds now numbering in the tens of thousands again across the wider ecosystem. A dedicated sanctuary established specifically for the herola gives that population, small as it remains, a fenced buffer against exactly the pressures that gutted it everywhere else. And Bruce Patterson's decades of published research have done something almost as valuable as any fence. Replacing the 1898 man-eater legend with an actual, evidence-based understanding of why Tsavo's lions look and hunt the way they do. Tsavo never asked to be understood. It simply kept demanding the same brutal arithmetic from anything trying to survive inside its thornbush. Generation after generation, long before anyone arrived to write any of it down. What's changed is who's finally doing the accounting. And whether that accounting arrives in time to matter for the species running closest to the bottom of the page, the ones with the least room left to absorb one more bad decade.